On January 9th, 2014, Governor Andrew Cuomo announced the nomination of Richard Ball as Commissioner of the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets. A native New Yorker, Mr. Ball has made a living in agriculture his entire life. For the past 24 years, he has been the owner and operator of Schoharie Valley Farms in Schoharie, New York, which consists of 200 acres and produces a wide range of vegetable crops, small fruits, and greenhouse crops. The farm serves both retail and wholesale consumers through an on-site market known as the Carrot Barn, and ships to brokers and restaurants in the local area as well as New York City. It was also my favorite place to go when I was little. Mr. Ball has held a number of positions within agriculture and community organizations at the local, state, and national level. Folks, please welcome Commissioner Ball as he offers an update from Albany.
Well, good morning, everybody. Great to be here with you on behalf of the governor who was invited, but you got me instead. I hope that's all right. Danielle, thank you so much for that introduction. It's always great to be back here at the Farmers Museum. I've been here several times this year. I was able to bring all the commissioners from the Northeast to Cooperstown in June of this summer, and we had a great time here. Thank you very much. So let's give a round of applause to our hosts here today, the Farmers Museum. Took a look at your agenda, and I think you've got a pretty good agenda today. You've got a lot of information, so I'm going to encourage you to keep your pencils up all day as you're here. You're going to learn from the people sitting next to you, as well as the workshops that are coming up a little bit. I've been asked to just spend a few minutes with you, not too much, and talk about an update from Albany and nationally, and I'll do that. I'll share a few concerns with you. But there's also a number of things that I'm pretty excited about. First of all, a couple of things that are a little bit of a concern and something that you should pay attention to. One is trade. Yeah, trade. NAFTA negotiations are going on as we speak, although not today. But as you know, we have an initiative in Washington to look at trade in a different way. 2 weeks ago, I was out in Denver, Colorado with a group of commissioners, secretaries, and directors of ag from around the United States, where we met at the Tri-National Accord for conversations with our counterparts in Canada and our counterparts in Mexico. And it was I was on my way there, and I thought this is either the biggest waste of time, given that NAFTA negotiations are happening at the same time, parallel, or it's the most important thing I could do. And I came back feeling like it was the most important thing we could have done. We had several days of very intense bilateral and trilateral conversations with both countries. It's a very sensitive time for agriculture, not just in the United States, but in New York. You know, there's some very significant statistics out there. Particularly for us in the Northeast, where we do an awful lot of dairy. 25% of our dairy exports in the United States go to Mexico. They're our biggest single dairy customer. And so it's very important that those relationships keep going. It's not just dairy, but it's grains, and it's poultry and livestock. And in particular, we have some serious issues with our Canadian neighbors over their pricing of milk, Class 6 and Class 7, with regards to dairy and their imports into their country. So we were able to have very meaningful conversations and friendships and relationships. One thing you'll learn about the food business is sometimes we think we're in the food business, sometimes we think we're in the vegetable or the livestock business. We're really in the relationship business. You got to have a relationship with your consumers, with your marketplace. That's so important. So that's going on. The other thing that's really important to note is that we've got a farm bill coming up. Every 5 years in this country we have an opportunity to look at the farm bill and rewrite that. It's one of the most unique pieces of legislation that ever happens and comes out of Washington. It's a pretty big bill. It's huge. 80% of it, of course, deals with the nutrition title. 20% of it deals with farm crops. But there's so many things in the Farm Bill, so many titles that range from organic and horticulture, conservation, insurance, and credit. We need to pay very close attention to it. And over the years, I think New York has kind of felt like, well, that's not really an awful lot to do with us in the farming community. You know, it's mostly about what I would call the program crops, things like cotton and sugar and rice, wheat and corn and soybeans. And while it's true that the Midwest and the Western states own most of the land in agriculture in the United States, more than half of the farm gate income to farms in the United States comes from the kind of crops that we grow in New York State, what is referred to as specialty crops. Things like dairy, fruit, and vegetables, horticulture. More than half of the farm gate income across the country comes from those kind of crops. So I think we've learned over the last 4 or 5 farm bills that New York does have a big need to be understood when it comes to the Farm Bill. And we've been holding listening sessions across the state over the last couple of weeks. I did the 5th listening session yesterday in New York City. We've been in the North Country. We've been out in Rochester. We've been in the Capital District, and we're headed to the Southern Tier next week. But it's very important for you to educate yourself about the Farm Bill and communicate your concerns in the Farm Bill to your legislative leaders. We're gathering all the information that we hear and communicating that with the governor, and we will go and communicate that with our representatives in Washington and make sure that New York's voice is heard when it comes to this discussion. But it's a very important time, and we'll have to live with that for the next Farm Bill session, and it'll be another 5 years before we have a chance to weigh in again. I was asked just the other day, are there any surprises in the Farm Bill from what you're hearing at the listening sessions? And I would say no. I've been around 5 Farm Bills that I remember paying attention to. Similar subjects, similar passions and concerns. Dairy, of course, and MPP, crop protection, and things like that. But what I was encouraged about in a bigger way, more than ever before, I was very pleased to hear the understanding between those who understand nutrition and SNAP benefits and those who understand agriculture, and realizing that we both need each other. That farmers need a marketplace, and that the nutrition program is a very big marketplace, and that the nutrition people understood that they needed farmers to produce the crops to be able to feed people who need it the most. I will assure you that the governor is very concerned in maintaining the health and welfare of the most vulnerable in our population, those who are entitled to the state benefits, but at the same time very concerned about making sure that our farmers in the state continue to enjoy a prosperity. So that's going on. So I would encourage you to pay attention to that and stay up close and personal as you can. The goal is to have something to look at by the end of this year, and we have to have a new Farm Bill in 2018. So stay tuned on that. Speaking of listening sessions, we've also been holding listening sessions around the state on Beginner Farmer. You know, some of you may be familiar with my story, but you know, I was one of those lucky kids that knew he wanted to be a farmer when he grew up because my grandparents were dairy farmers. Mom was the 5th generation on a dairy farm in the corner of Greene and Delaware counties. Hillside Dairy Farm. I was pretty sure I was going to be a dairy farmer when I was 7. But unfortunately, my grandparents sold that farm when I was about 10 or 12, and they retired. So I didn't have a farm to go to. But I knew I wanted to be a farmer, so at 18, when I graduated from high school, I walked down a long laneway, knocked on a door, asked for a job, got hired, and went out in the field. Was out in the field with 72 guys my age from another country that spoke a different language. So I learned how to speak Spanish real fast, and they learned a little English. We learned how to work hard together. I wound up becoming a crew leader, and wound up managing that farm after 20 years. So that was my education, and that was my Beginner Farmer program, was to work on a farm. And it was after 20 years that we were able to come back home and buy our own farm in the Scary Valley. That was 24 years ago. We now have 50 employees on our farm, and we've got, although I'm technically a 1st-generation farmer, we've got 3 generations working on the farm. So I kind of get the beginner farmer thing. The stakes are higher now than they were back then. You know, I had learned how to farm, I had the optimism back then, and I figured out how to confuse a banker and let us borrow a lot of money to buy a farm. But you know, the stakes are much higher today. You know, everything about it is much harder today. The learning curve is tougher. It's a little harder to confuse a banker today, and so you need a plan. And so one of the first things that the governor asked me to do when I came into this job was pull together a beginner farmer work group. So I brought in all the stakeholders there, beginner farmers, of course, veterans. We brought in Farm Credit, we brought in Cornell, we brought in FSA, the USDA programs for our beginner farmers. We brought in the Land Trust, and we sat around and talked about what are the issues, what are the things we can do. The average age of a farmer is going up. We know that. It's 57 and a half right now in New York State. That's not all bad, actually. I was able to call my mom and tell her that I was above average, and she But we do have farmers who have spent a career building a farm, building an asset, and may not have heirs that are ready to come onto the farm. They need an exit strategy. And at the same time, we have a growing number of young people. We have a growing number of veterans. We have a growing number of people looking at another career, interested in agriculture. So how do we connect those dots? You know, access to capital is a concern, access to land is a concern, but also, and you're here today, a little bit about this, is access to training. How do I farm? You know, I want to try something different. Where do I learn that? And so, of course, how do we connect all those dots is the biggest challenge. So at Department, this year, we are a one-stop shop for that. We've stood that up as a result of that work group that you can call whether you're a veteran, whether you're a young person and you need land or you need water, or you need whatever. We're going to figure out to point you in the right direction. But we need to do more. And so we've stood up listening sessions to go around and see how it's going, to stay on this and keep it going. I am happy to tell you that we do have a beginner farmer grant. TR that just got released here in the last couple of weeks. It's $1 million to help new and beginner farmers invest in equity in their farm, whether it's equipment or any kind of equity position to help them get a foothold there. Farm Credit has some things, FSA has some things, so we can help you to coordinate that, and I'm excited about that. I never thought I'd hear myself say this, but I'm kind of excited about industrial hemp. You know, this was a crop that was around kind of like hops, you know, it was around back in the day. It was a big deal. A lot of people raised hemp. It was used primarily for our Navy to make ropes. But it had so many uses. They tell me 25,000 uses. And we have a new wiggle room in federal legislation in the last farm bill that allows us to explore this new crop. So 2 years ago, we set out, we had a program where, you know, as commissioner, I could authorize up to 10 different operations that would work along with a research institution in our state, like Cornell or SUNY Morrisville, to plant some hops and do some research on that. Excuse me, hemp. And we did that. And then last year, before the State of the State address, we spoke with the governor about it. He looked at the possibilities on that, and he said, you know, what should we do? We should get more of this going. We should take the cap off. There should be more than 10 farms that would participate here. And what do you think? How many should be involved? And so we talked about that a little bit. And then I remember I was with him in Syracuse when he gave his State of the State address there. I was sitting in the front row, and he said, well, when it comes to industrial hemp, we're going to take the cap off. It's unlimited. The number of farms that want to participate is up to them, and they can have a direct relationship not only with the university system, but also directly with the Department of Agriculture. So I was excited. I'm happy to tell you that this past season we had went from our research plots totaling like 35 or 40 acres of hemp to about 2,000 acres of hemp that we've got planted all across New York State, literally from Lake Erie to Long Island. So it's the biggest research trial we've ever undertaken with SUNY Morrisville and Cornell. It's substantial. And the governor announced this summer that we're going to invest $5 million in processing of hemp. So there's grants invested out there for people who have the capacity to process or want to process the hemp. So we have a marketplace for it. So I think there's a new opportunity for our farms, a new option, a new alternative there. So stay tuned on that. I think the thing I'm probably most excited about is Farm to School, because this is a way we can get to the next generation. We've got a number of blue jackets in the room. Keith Scheibel's here with Vernon Verona, one of our outstanding FFA chapters in the state. We have so many of them, but that's your next leadership here in agriculture across the state. And FFA does such a good job. So I would ask you guys to give them a round of applause here, the next generation. We're going to work very hard in New York State. The governor agreed last year to put into our budget some funding to increase ag in the classroom. But we also included in the budget a goal and some funding to back this up to double the number of agricultural teachers we have in New York State and to increase the number of FFA chapters across New York State by 100. So I think that bodes well for us. We do a good job when we get these young people to Cornell or SUNY Cobleskill or Morrisville. But the key is we need to get more people in the pipeline, understanding that there's a career in agriculture. Which brings me back to that Farm to School idea. It was like some 20 years ago when I was asked to be a part of a nutrition group. They needed a token farmer in our county, and I was it. And so I went down to see Harry Central School and listened to this conversation about childhood obesity. I'm thinking childhood obesity and juvenile diabetes. And I'm like, really? Is this a concern in our schools with our young people? And it was. And it was legitimate. And I remember walking down the hallway around to the cafeteria and looking at our school nutrition person there, who was a good person. And I looked at the menu. Now, I live in the Schoharie Valley. It's one of the best vegetable growing regions in the United States, one of the top 10 soils in the world, and probably 1,000 acres of vegetables within 10 miles of that school. And that school is literally 2 miles from my farm. And there was not one thing on the menu that came from the Schoharie Valley. And I thought, that's a crime. And that bothered the heck out of me. It wasn't so much that we weren't selling food to the school. It bothered me that those young people were going to grow up in that community, an agricultural community, and they were going to leave. They were going to get an education, and they were going to leave that community because they felt they needed to go somewhere else to have a career. And they did not know what we did 2 miles down the road. And that's on us. And so one of the things I see in Farm to School is the opportunity to let our young people know that there's a career out there. There are opportunities out there right in your rural community that are real and that are viable. They're in the food system, and there's all kinds of technology, and there's all kinds of opportunities there. We need to make sure we do a good job letting them know that's a possibility. So Farm to School has been kind of an important issue for me, and we're doing some things about it. I was able to go down to New York City 2 years ago and work with New York City School Food. The biggest buyer of food in the United States of America, other than our military, is New York City School Food. They feed 1 million meals a day, 1 million meals a day. And we started a program with them called New York Thursdays, where every Thursday we celebrate something on the menu from New York State. We've got 100% New York apples now in the school system there. We've got 100% New York dairy now. And this past year I was able to go down there and have a New York hamburger and a New York French fries from New York potatoes on the menu. So it's a great platform that we can start to build those connections. And I think it's a great one. And you know, a month ago I had a great week. It was a good week to be the commissioner because I was in Tioga, New York, where they decided to start their own New York Thursdays program. And we went there, they invited me to come down because they knew it was kind of a big deal for me. And I got there, and there was about 200 kids running all around. And they were going to various booths like these, except it was all outside. They were across the road in a field. I had planted a half an acre of potatoes. And those kids were out there with shovels digging up the potatoes that they had planted. They had them for lunch that day, along with some local chicken, local corn, local vegetables. They visited a little farmer's market. When they got done, going to all the booths that had their stickers. And I thought, this is great. In that school system, 5 different school districts together, we're doing New York Thursdays. And they were going to build that platform and start educating those kids. And what excited me was it wasn't just the kids and the teachers and the superintendents there, but over in the corner, the parking lot, there were like 5 combines, self-propelled choppers, and the whole dairy and crop industry was there supporting this idea. So those young people were going to not only eat good food in school, they could look at some big equipment that I was a little envious of, and they could think about career opportunities in agriculture. And I thought, that's pretty cool to bring that together. And then later that week, just 3 days later, I had gone down to New York City for New York Thursdays, and I visited PS 32 in the Bronx. And there were some nice young people who were doing a garden cafe program, and I was able to speak to that. I brought some butternut squash seed along with me. Butternut squash seeds, about the size of a pumpkin seed. And we planted those seeds into greenhouse trays. And those kids got to tag their plant. They wrote a little tag, wrote down their name on it, put it in there, planted their seed, they watered it, and they got to watch in the classroom as that seed germinated. A few lesson plans there, you know, about growing things. And it was kind of fun. When it was up, the plants were up about this high, we brought them up to Schoharie, New York. We planted them out in our butternut squash field, and we grew them on. And a couple weeks ago, we got them to come up on a bus. And they drove up to Schoharie County, and they went out in the field. We walked down there, we found their plant. And they harvested their squash. And we sent it back to their school. And the chef went into the cafeteria with them. They went in the kitchen, and they cooked that squash up, and they put it on the menu the next day. And we heard all kinds of wonderful comments that you can imagine. The first one was the night before from the principal when she asked if there was going to be room for the bus to park. I said, I think you're going to be okay. I had asked the same question when I went down to their school to see if there was room to park a car, and there isn't. There isn't a patch of grass within, probably 4 miles of that school. But here were those kids from the city who came up and got to walk around on the farm. One of them got off the bus, and we went walking down the field. It was about a little over a half-a-mile walk. I said, I'd only seen farms in movies. I had no idea they were this big. And how come the air smells so different up here? And then they had lunch, and it was great, and we had some fresh carrots, we had a big salad, we had some apples, had their sandwiches. And one of the little ones said, we don't get to, we're kind of poor in my house, we don't get to eat real food very often. But they still got to eat real food that day. And I thought, connect the dots. Even for those kids, there's more career opportunities existing in the world for them than there are within the 10 square blocks where they live. So part of school continues to be an important thing for me. So our FFA efforts and Ag in the Classroom efforts and connecting those dots with Farm to School are important. There's 2 other marketing things that we'll just touch on, and I'll let you get to work here. But Taste New York has been awesome. The governor came up with this idea 3 years ago, Taste New York. Let's afford travelers in New York, whether they be New Yorkers or out-of-state people. Let them know what we have in New York. So value-added products. We have Taste New York stores in our heavy traffic areas. We've got one on the Taconic Parkway, right up here at Lock 13 on the Thruway. We're opening them up in several locations. And the first year we doubled sales. The second year we tripled sales. To a little over $13.1 million last year for over 1,100 different producers in New York State. So I think that's a pretty great program. It was about a year and a half ago when I was in a cabinet meeting and the governor called me out, and also the Commissioner of Health, and wanted to talk about our standards. how are our standards for growing stuff in New York different from other states? Well, almost every state has a hooray for us, standard. Our local program, it's Jersey Fresh or Massachusetts Grown or whatever. And we had a program too. It basically said it's grown in New York and it's local, and that's great. But the marketplace wants to know a little more than just that. The marketplace wants to know something about transparency, wants to know something about food safety, wants to know something about who you are, how you grow, and where you are. And so with the governor's help and his active participation, we developed a program very intentionally called New York Grown and Certified. And I'm pretty excited about this opportunity. New York Grown and Certified will tell the consumer, whether it's a mom and dad in a grocery store, whether it's a retailer, a wholesaler, a restaurant chef, three things. Number one, it's New York. It's from the New York family farm. Number two, it's a farm that has a food safety audited program embedded on the farm, something we call a GAP program, Good Agricultural Practices. And thirdly, it will tell them that there is a nutrient management plan, an environmental quotient about the way they do business on their farm. We call that in New York an AIM plan, Agricultural Environmental Management, also in a checked off audited program. It's voluntary, but farms that meet those three criteria can use a New York Grown and Certified label, which will tell them that, tell the consumers that product is grown to a higher standard than anywhere else in the United States. And it's grown by leaps and bounds. We added 7 dairy processors here 2 months ago, so we've got, I think, somewhere around 63,000 acres of vegetables enrolled and over 1,200 dairy farms on the program. Tops and Stop and Shop and Hannaford's are all on board, and it's growing every day. So I think with those two programs, we have an opportunity to leverage our place in the marketplace and find new opportunities for our grower community in New York State to connect. We live in New York State with great resources. We have good land. We have some of the best growers in the country. And we get to live and we get to work and we get to farm a couple hours away from the most marvelous and the biggest marketplace anywhere in the world. So I like our chances. So as exciting as I was when I was 7 with my grandfather on the farm and riding on the hay wagon, and as excited as I was when I was 18 and I got to have a job working on the farm and supporting myself. And then as excited as I was when I was 40 and I was able to buy my own farm and drop down on my knees and stick my hand into my own dirt. I think I'm more excited today about the opportunities we have in New York State, especially for the next generation of producers. So with that, that's what's going on in Albany. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and share a few minutes with you. And again, you've got a great agenda ahead of you. Keep your pencils high, pay attention, rub shoulders with everybody you can, and good luck. Thank you so much.